the DH-4 played a large part in the development of aviation in America and the world. But it's kind of like George Washington's horse. Everybody remembered George Washington, but nobody knew the name of his horse.
Suffice it to say that the Army's land-based aviation featured the DH-4 as the only American-built combat airplane to see war service on the front in World War I.
The DH-4 Liberty plane deserves its place as one of the most significant aircraft in aviation history.
At the turn of the 20th century, innovation and invention were hallmarks of the American experience. The potential of manned flight, however, was just emerging. A pair of bicycle shop owners from Dayton, Ohio, would change all that.
The Wright brothers, of course, had invented the airplane here and made the first flights here in the United States. After that, in between 1903 and 1914, aviation had been allowed to stagnate in the United States because of the Wrights being overly protective of their patents.
They were tied up in litigation with their chief rival, Glenn Curtiss, and I think most aviation historians would tell you that that also played a role in sort of holding back progress in American aviation.
With his company tied up in American courts over their copyrights, Wilbur Wright took the Wright Flyer to France. This would be the first public demonstration of the invention he and his brother created 5 years earlier.
You know, nobody really took the Wright brothers seriously until Wilbur Wright made his famous demonstration flights in Paris in 1908, and that sort of electrified the European continent, and Europe grabbed the lead from the United States, and aircraft companies sprung up all over the continent.
At one of these aerial demonstrations, a 26-year-old English engineer was captivated by what he saw. Born the second son of an Anglican vicar, young Geoffrey de Havilland returned to England with a vision.
He borrowed £1,000 from his father-in-law, and he decided he was going to build his own airplane. So luckily he had a very generous father-in-law who believed in him and gave him the money. His wife helped him sew the fabric on the wings, and his best friend helped him build the structure. So they pulled the airplane out and they decided to give a test flight, and they crashed it on the first flight. Geoffrey was undeterred though. He built a second airplane which he successfully flew.
De Havilland's success was duly noted by others. In 1914, the newly formed Aircraft Manufacturing Company Limited, better known as Airco, recruited him as their chief designer. He would go on to become one of the most prolific aircraft designers in Europe. Even after the Wright brothers' successful European flights, the aeroplane was still a novelty in the United States, a symbol of untethered adventure. In 1910, to help spur its development, publisher William Randolph Hearst offered a $50,000 prize for the first aviator to cross the continent by air in less than 30 days. Answering the challenge was a 31-year-old adventurer from Pittsburgh named Calbraith Perry Rogers. He learned to fly after only 90 minutes of instruction from Orville Wright. It took Rogers 49 days, 76 stops, and 16 crashes before he and the Vin Fiz reached California. While Rogers didn't capture the prize for a 30-day crossing, he did ignite America's enthusiasm for manned flight. The American government, however, remained skeptical, even as tensions were growing in Europe.
So by the time World War I broke out in 1914, that's when Europe really surged ahead, of necessity, because it was now relevant to the war, and the airplane was demonstrating its potential as a weapon.